This is 2011's Take Me Home Tonight. Warning! Spoilers ahead. We open up on Matt talking to Barry about a hot girl that he had seen in the store from their childhood. But Barry has his eyes on a different beauty that's walking around the store. Matt still can't stop talking about this girl, and now Wendy calls him out on his fake 7 minutes in heaven from his childhood. Matt still thinks that this girl was perfect since she covered for him back in school years, but Wendy knows better. She plays this up as them sharing some twin sibling power, but Barry decides that he's going to make his move with the other woman. Matt and Alice don't like Barry's chances, but Barry stays true to his purpose. During the title sequence, we see that these three were actually part of the class of '84, and their lives have not ended up where they'd hoped. Matt works at a video rental store, and his dream girl seems to be walking through the mall. Meanwhile, Matt's catching up with a friend from high school who ended up becoming really successful, and he tries to play off his job as a simple rest stop in his grand plan. His friend leaves his card with Matt to offer him a job, but when he walks out, Matt spots Tori walking into the store. He quickly runs into the employee hallway to ditch his uniform, and he makes his way in the front of the store in his casual clothes. He tries to play it cool, and eventually, Tori starts to recognize him from high school. She literally remembers him for the last things he would have wanted to be remembered for. He was definitely hoping that Tori would remember him from their 7 minutes in heaven, but she calls him out for winning the perfect attendance award every year. At least she'll know that you're punctual. Matt simply goes with it, and he asks her how life has been with her. When he finds out that she's in investment banking, Matt decides to lie about working in the same field. Tori then asks him if he's going to Kyle's party that night, and she thinks that he should come. When Tori leaves, Matt calls Barry about what just happened, and Barry takes the call in the middle of trying to close a sale. After hearing Matt's plan to go to the party that night, he ends up blowing the sale and he gets fired in the process. That night, all three of the friends sit down for dinner with Matt's parents, and Barry's definitely drowning his sorrows from being fired. Then Matt's father questions him on what his big plan is for a career, and of course Matt has absolutely no idea. Later that night, Matt goes to check on Wendy, and she just got a letter from Cambridge, and she's worried to see if she was accepted into the master's program. She refuses to open it, and she makes Matt promise not to bring it up to anyone at the party. When Matt goes to his room, he starts to lose hope in his chances to get Tori, but Barry gives him a very inspirational speech about how he got control of his acne and he isn't a virgin anymore. Elsewhere, everyone's getting ready for Kyle's party and the 80s vibe is real. On their way to Kyle's party, Barry starts drinking even more, and he has them stop the car at the dealership he was fired from. Barry convinces Matt to essentially break into the dealership and borrow one of the cars, but things go downhill when Barry puts the old code in instead of the new one. The alarm starts going off, but Barry keeps to the plan. They steal one of the cars, and everyone seems to be having the time of their life as Barry drives Matt to the party in the fancy car. When they get to the party, Matt finds a bag of coke that Barry's last boss kept hidden in there, and they get a little dab of it on their tongues before heading in. When they get there, Kyle gives them a healthy dose of irony, and they head inside to look around for Tori. After making their rounds, they realize that Tori isn't there, but Carlos makes his grand entrance by running his wheelchair right into Matt. When Matt tells him the fake place that he works at, Carlos calls his bluff because he actually works there. Matt asks him to cover for him in case he finds Tori before him. Meanwhile, Barry's trying to scope out the women there, but he winds up going back to Matt to ask for more coke. Finally, Tori arrives and Matt is mesmerized. Before Matt can make his move, another guy from high school pops up and makes introductions. Wendy and Kyle show up to make conversation, and Wendy tries to give Matt his big opening. Matt's hard to watch here. No one says things like freaky deaky when they're trying to impress someone. Then he turns around and talks about the wind. Not even the weather, just the wind. That doesn't even count as small talk in any realms. While Matt's striking out, Barry's turning into a Scarface in the bathroom. For someone that's never done coke, that sure is a lot of coke. Now that Barry's reinvigorated, he rejoins the party with a new sense of self, and he immediately hits the dance floor. He starts dancing up on one of the women, but the woman's boyfriend pushes him right into the DJ. Meanwhile, Tori's getting bored with Rick, and she uses Matt as a way to get her out of that nightmare. Just when Matt starts to open up to Tori, they hear that Barry's having a dance-off with the other guy inside. Yeah, I'd put everything on pause just to see that too, and it did not disappoint. I really want to go to a house party just so I can see someone dance like Barry. He ends it with a kick into the other guy's nuts. Oh wait, he goes back for a second kick. After Barry runs away, he causes one of the girls to start choking, and Matt mistakes Tori as the victim instead. After that awkward mix-up, he finally breaks down and tells her that she was his crush in high school, and he's terrible with this. Tori ends up loving his confession, and the two of them dance until Kyle stops the music to make an announcement. Kyle takes this time to propose to Wendy, and she says yes. Everyone celebrates except for Matt, but Barry seems to get lucky by the pool. Ashley shows up to tell him that she liked his style of dancing, and she licks his face and tells him to find her later. Back inside, Matt takes the time to pull Wendy aside, and he tells her that marrying Kyle's a bad idea. After hearing Matt's ideal life for her, Wendy decides to throw him under the bus and talk about how at least she's making life decisions. She has a point. This is one of those moments where the movie seems to tell you that it doesn't matter if it's a good or bad decision, at least you're making them. Those are the moments to get people into trouble. What does Matt do? He continues his bad decisions by running out to his fake car and pretending to be going to a party in Beverly Hills. Granted, it's working, but this is never going to work out, obviously. Tori and Matt ride together in his stolen car while Barry rides with Tori's friends. Tori tells him that the party's full of bankers, so she thinks that they'll know plenty of people there. While they ride to the hills, Matt can't help but be mesmerized by her charm. She tells him that the party is at her boss's house, and he can be a bit of a perv at times. When they arrive, the party's a much higher class party than the one they just came from. After mingling for a moment, Tori's boss Pete shows up, and he tries to pull her aside to get some private time upstairs. Thanks to Matt's quick thinking, he's able to distract Pete enough with talks about Matt's fake career. And who arrives just in time to back up Matt's claims? Carlos. Carlos is the wingman that deserved more screen time. I don't know where Barry is at this point. Kicking another banker in the balls during another dance-off? Doubtful here, but I don't know what else he can do. Carlos is backing up a lie that doesn't benefit him in any way. That's a true hero. After Pete leaves, Tori tells Matt that he was absolutely amazing. Meanwhile, we get an update on Barry's whereabouts. Barry's at the bar and he's approached by a mature Trish. Trish asks if he has any powder, and she takes him to the bathroom to snort a bit. Suddenly, her friend Francis comes in, and he kind of ruins the mood by wanting to watch. Barry's a little standoffish at first, but he's willing to give it a shot. Back outside, Matt asks Tori about whether she enjoys what she does, and after she tries to convince him that she does, she tells the truth. Tori's already at the point where she's questioning if she really wants to be in this career. It turns out that the two of them feel the same way about diving into a career that everyone thinks is a great opportunity. Then they randomly decide to play the penis game. For those of you that don't know what that is, you say it really quiet the first time, and the person that says it the loudest wins. I don't recommend playing this game in a business setting, but to each their own. Meanwhile, Barry's having a bit of exhibitionist fun. He's not enjoying himself, though. When Francis gets closer and starts speaking German, Barry's definitely had enough. Tori and Matt decide to jump into the neighbor's yard, and they play a quick round of truth or dare. Tori wants to know why he didn't ask her out during their time at high school, and Matt admits that he just didn't have the balls to do it. He also admits that it was his biggest regret, and so he asks her if she would have said yes. When she admits that she would have said no back then, he sighs a sigh of relief knowing that things worked out for the best. And she explains that she never knew him like she does now. Their game of truth and dare ends with a sensual kiss, and she starts to take her clothes off. Once their clothes are off, they continue their sensual moments. One of the biggest jumps is to go from that to Wendy and Kyle in his bathroom. Obviously this moment had to happen, but did they really have to interrupt the scene between Tori and Matt? I'm speaking about this from the standpoint of the plot, obviously. When Wendy tells Kyle about applying to Cambridge, it's clear that he's not happy with this one single bit. But when he opens the letter for her, they find out that she actually didn't make it in anyways. Kyle throws out the idea of bathroom sex to make her feel better, and we cut back to Tori and Matt, who have considerably fewer clothes on now. Tori tells Matt that she loves how honest he is, and this causes some internal turmoil with Matt. Yeah, we're 2/3 of the way done with the movie, so we've got to have our obligatory "oh no" moment. He finally got happy and it all came crumbling down. Surprisingly, he actually got to get down and dirty before the moment. Matt starts to open up and tell her the truth about his job and everything else. And Tori congratulates him on sleeping with his high school crush before putting clothes on and walking away. When Matt gets back to the party, Barry gets a hold of him and they rush out of there. In the car, Matt tells Barry that he slept with Tori, and Barry yells it out to the entire city. Then Matt tells him about coming clean on things, and Barry's mad that Matt was able to mess up the entire night with his clean conscience. Barry convinces Matt to do some coke, but Barry doesn't keep his eyes on the road. They end up crashing into a ditch and coke goes everywhere. No one seems to be having a good night anymore, but that doesn't mean things can't get worse. Police show up behind Matt and Barry, and it turns out that it's his father and his partner. It's one of those old-fashioned worst-case scenarios, can't lie. The movie had me sold on the idea that Matt's dad was actually arresting them. His partner slammed Barry on the hood of the car, and I was wondering just how hard he had to go to really sell it. Barry just had an airbag ram a handful of coke into his eyes. I think he's heard enough. Matt's dad tries to get Matt to break and decide how he's going to turn his life around, but Matt still has no idea. After playing this up for a little longer, Matt and Barry find out that this is all just a joke, and they're going to go free. Before Matt's dad drives off, he tells Matt to take a shot at something. Matt heads back to Kyle's to try and fix things with Tori, and when he finds her, he tries to defend why he lied to her in the first place. When it looks like there's no chance of fixing things with Tori, Matt impulsively agrees to ride in the ball. Before he rides the ball, Matt addresses the whole crowd, and he comes clean on every lie that he told that night. After his inspirational speech, they close Matt in the ball and the crowd cheers him on. Wendy tries to talk Kyle out of doing this, but Kyle isn't listening to a word she says. Kyle starts up the truck and he rolls the giant ball all the way down the street. This is a sure way to kill someone. They roll this giant metal ball down this crowded street, and Matt's handling this so well. Oh, never mind, the ball just went over the edge. Whatever brains Matt had have been jostled to mush. Well, the last thing I wanted to see was Topher Grace throw up on himself and drown in a giant metal ball in a pool, but here we are. Matt struggles to get out of the ball, and he eventually pushes his way to the surface. Once he gets out of the pool, Barry charges at him with joy and knocks him back into the pool. As they walk back up the street, Tori shows up with Wendy, and Matt finally asks Tori for her phone number. She quickly rambles off her phone number, and she tells him that his ball ride was pretty impressive. When they get back to the party, Matt's welcomed like a legend, and Wendy tells Kyle that she's breaking up with him. The funniest part of this movie is watching Kyle ugly cry and Ashley using an apple as a bong. Tori officially gives Matt her number, and he goes in for a goodbye kiss. Across town, Matt's dad is called for the ball in the pool, and he smiles when he sees Matt's name tag from the video store. In the end, Wendy, Barry, and Matt go to get breakfast as the three happiest people of the night. Then the credits roll. This is a great feel-good movie, and it goes perfect for anyone that seems to be feeling stuck. Also, I'm adding another disclaimer. If someone shows up in a pickup truck with a giant metal ball on a hill, don't do it. Just don't. Give it a shot. The movie, not the ball. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.